In August 1947, British rule in India came to an end. But independence did not arrive as one single country stepping into freedom. Instead, British India was divided into two new dominions, India and Pakistan. At midnight between the 14th and 15th of August, maps, governments, armies, railways, treasuries, and millions of lives were suddenly pulled into a new political reality. The event became known as the Partition of India. It was not just a constitutional transfer of power. It was one of the largest and most traumatic reorganizations of people and territory in modern history. Communities that had lived beside each other for generations were forced to ask a frightening question: which side of the new border would they belong to? Before partition, British India was a vast colonial possession ruled under what was known as the British Raj. It included directly governed provinces, but it also existed alongside hundreds of princely states, whose rulers had agreements with the British Crown. The independence plan had to answer a difficult question: how could such a complicated political landscape be transformed into sovereign countries almost overnight? The solution chosen was division. Areas with Muslim majorities would broadly form Pakistan, while areas with non-Muslim majorities, mainly Hindu and Sikh populations, would remain with India. On paper, this sounded like an administrative formula. In reality, people were not arranged neatly by religion, and many regions were deeply mixed. The most intense territorial divisions happened in Punjab and Bengal. These were not empty lines drawn across unused land. They were living provinces with cities, farms, villages, families, temples, mosques, gurdwaras, markets, and transport links. In both places, district-wide religious majorities became the basis for deciding which territory went to India and which went to Pakistan. Punjab, in the northwest, contained large Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh communities. Bengal, in the east, also had Muslim majority and Hindu majority areas. Partition cut through both provinces, splitting not just administrations but cultural worlds. The new borders turned neighbors into minorities overnight and made familiar roads, rail routes, and family networks suddenly dangerous or foreign. The legal basis for this transformation was the Indian Independence Act of 1947. This act ended Crown rule in India and created two self-governing dominions, the Union of India and the Dominion of Pakistan. These dominions were not identical to the modern countries we know today. The Union of India later became the Republic of India. The Dominion of Pakistan later became today's Islamic Republic of Pakistan, while its eastern wing eventually became Bangladesh after 1971. But in 1947, the immediate goal was to transfer power quickly. The British were leaving, and the machinery of empire had to be divided. What followed was a race to separate institutions that had been built to function as one. Partition was not only about territory. It also meant dividing the structures that held British India together. The British Indian Army had to be split between the two new states. So did the Royal Indian Navy, the Indian Civil Service, the railway system, and the Central Treasury. These were the practical foundations of government and security. Dividing them was extremely difficult, especially because the new states needed them immediately. Refugees were moving, violence was spreading, and both India and Pakistan needed functioning administrations from the first day of independence. The problem was that independence created governments before it created stability. The new countries inherited power, but also confusion, shortages, mistrust, and urgent crises. One of the most complicated parts of the independence settlement involved the princely states. These states were not directly ruled like British provinces. Their rulers had subsidiary alliances and obligations to the British. When British paramountcy ended, those obligations lapsed. In practical terms, the rulers were left to decide whether to join India, join Pakistan, or attempt to remain independent. Sardar Patel later summarized this moment by saying that, with the lapse of paramountcy, every Indian state became a separate independent entity. That created a dangerous possibility. Instead of two new countries, the subcontinent could fragment into many political units. Integration therefore became one of the urgent tasks of the post-partition era. Many princely states acceded to India or Pakistan in August 1947, but not all decisions were simple or immediate. Some rulers tried to preserve independence. Among the most important cases were Hyderabad and Jammu and Kashmir. Their choices mattered because these were not minor territories. They had strategic, political, and symbolic importance. The question of accession could involve the ruler's preference, the population's composition, geography, and pressure from the new dominions. These unresolved decisions showed that partition was not a single event completed at midnight. It opened a chain of disputes about sovereignty, identity, and state power. In some cases, the consequences continued for decades, especially in relation to Kashmir. The human cost of partition was enormous. Between 12 and 20 million people were displaced along religious lines. Muslims moved toward Pakistan. Hindus and Sikhs moved toward India. But this movement was not orderly or safe. It became one of the largest mass migrations in history, unfolding amid fear, rumor, revenge, and administrative collapse. People left homes with whatever they could carry. Some expected to return. Many never did. Trains, roads, and refugee camps became symbols of a crisis too large for the new governments to manage. Partition turned identity into a matter of survival. A person's religion could decide whether a village felt safe, whether a journey was possible, or whether a family had to flee. The violence surrounding partition remains one of its darkest legacies. Estimates of the death toll vary widely, from around 200,000 to as many as 2 million people. The range itself tells us something important. The chaos was so vast that even counting the dead became difficult. Violence happened before, during, and after the formal transfer of power. It included massacres, attacks on caravans, forced conversions, abductions, and the destruction of entire communities. The causes were not simply ancient hatred. They were intensified by collapsing authority, political uncertainty, fear of becoming a vulnerable minority, and retaliation that spiraled rapidly. Partition created conditions where panic and violence fed each other. It is important to understand what the term Partition of India does and does not include. It refers specifically to the 1947 division of British India into India and Pakistan. It does not refer to earlier separations such as Burma, now Myanmar, or Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, from the administration of British India. It also does not include later events such as the incorporation of French India into India between 1947 and 1954, or India's annexation of Goa and other Portuguese-controlled districts in 1961. Nearby political entities like Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, and the Maldives were also not divided by the 1947 partition. This matters because South Asia's political map changed many times, but partition was a specific rupture. The creation of Pakistan also needs careful explanation. In 1947, Pakistan was not only the Western Territory that is today Pakistan. It also included East Pakistan, separated from West Pakistan by a vast stretch of Indian territory. East Pakistan later became Bangladesh after its secession in 1971. That later event is sometimes confused with the partition of India, but it was different. It was a partition of Pakistan, not of India. Still, the connection matters. The unusual geography of Pakistan in 1947 showed how religious identity had been used as a principle for state formation, even when geography, language, and regional interests were deeply divided. The consequences of that structure became visible over time. The legacy of partition still shapes India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. It created borders, but also memories, lost homes, divided families, refugee identities, and national stories built around trauma and survival. The violence produced deep suspicion between India and Pakistan, and that atmosphere continues to influence their relationship. Disputes over territory, especially Kashmir, cannot be understood without the unsettled politics of 1947. Yet partition is not only a story of leaders and borders. It is also the story of ordinary people forced to make impossible choices under extreme pressure. Independence brought freedom from empire, but partition showed that the birth of nations can carry a devastating human price. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.